Hi, I'm Natalie Patterson and I'm a Professor of Clinical Nursing and I'm the Chief Investigator of the SEISMIC R study, which is a study looking at evaluating new staffing models in intensive care and its realist evaluation. So I'm just going to go through this site initiation visit and we'll talk through some of the things that we need to think about for the study. So just to give you a little background, as you know, optimising the deployment of the very scarce nursing workforce in intensive care or critical care is very important for patient safety and staff wellbeing. At present, staffing models are determined by NHS service specification, the DO5, and one-to-one patient nurse ratios for the highest acuity patients, the level 3 patients. We saw following COVID and during COVID that there was a rapid expansion of ICU capacity, leading to the adoption of different models. So this study hopes to examine some of those different models as well as existing one-to-one models. What we do know is that the strengths and the weaknesses, also the costs and effects of these models remain uncertain. And we don't have the evidence for those, but we do have good evidence to know that low nurse staffing levels and high workload are associated with adverse outcomes, not only for staff, but also for patients and more broadly organisation-wide. We have very little evidence, however, for this at an ICU level. So, although we don't really understand what's going on, this study will hopefully help us to answer some of these questions. So what do we plan to do? We want to look at the key components of those models. So we're going to do 4 things. We will undertake a UK-wide survey, looking at England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland to look at the staffing models that are in place at the moment, including any of those that have been retained or any of the practices that have been retained around deploying staff since the pandemic. We will also undertake detailed case studies, which will involve interviews and ethnographies across 6 sites in the UK. So we will be interviewing staff and watching their decision-making practices. So the survey will come to everybody via ICNARC. It'll go to all the nurse leads, or hopefully it will reach the nurse leads, and we plan to understand how each unit are configuring their staffing at present. In the case studies, we will be observing how decisions are made by the nurses in charge, but also how it feels for the nurses who are working in those units to be working under the conditions that they are. So we'll be gauging the impact of how those decisions are made, not only with the nurses at the bedside, but also with a small number of patients and families, and potentially other ICU staff such as AHPs and medics. We will look at how decisions have to change within shifts, for instance where staff are needing to be moved around, and how skill mix is ascertained. And we will be shadowing staff. So I have a research team doing this, but I will also be undertaking some of these ethnographic observations myself. In workstream 3 and 4, we are undertaking a data linkage led by Professor Peter Griffiths at Southampton, and we will be linking e-roster nurse data and ICNARC case mix program data to understand the variability in demand. We will not be linking at an individual nurse level. We will be linking at the level of the episode, the period of care, so the shift that nurses are working in, and looking at the patient outcomes associated with that overall shift. So we won't be able to drill down as to the patient outcome for each nurse. Just to reassure you, this is going to be done at a shift level and across a period of time. So this will hopefully help us to understand the effect of the skill mix on aggregate patient outcomes. We will then be looking at the impact of different models of staffing. So for instance, when you have different skill mixes, on patient capacity, the flow through the hospital, and also costs. And we'll be doing that through simulation modelling with colleagues in both Southampton and Exeter. So just to go through some brief study governance issues, obviously this has been approved by the HRA. We've now had C&C issued locally for your organisation, and we have letters of access in place for researchers coming on site.